Welcome back to Dirty 20, guys. Today, in honor of the release of the Pixar film Onward, our producer, Jason, thought it would be a good idea to make a video about how to get kids into D&D. And that's what we're going to talk about today on Dirty 20. So, you might have watched the film Onward, or your kids might have shown some interest in playing Dungeons & Dragons, and you're not quite sure how to go about it. Well, this is what we're going to talk about today. Now, you may be thinking, why is this guy who doesn't have any kids telling me that my kids should be playing D&D? That's a fair point. Well, if you want the parents' perspective, I really strongly recommend Miam Bialik's video, D&D Therapy. Miam Bialik is, of course, an actress who played Amy Farrah Fowler in The Big Bang Theory. Also, back in the 90s, she happened to play Blossom in one of my favorite TV shows growing up as a kid. But in her video, she talks about how she was able to connect with her kids and really improve her relationship with them through playing D&D and sharing that with them. I really strongly recommend you go and check that video out. However, I was a teacher for a really long time, and I worked with kids anything from about 8 years old well up into kind of university age. So I think I have some good reasons for why your kids should be playing D&D. So what are some of the great things that D&D can teach children? I think number one is teamwork. Working together with your friends or family members to achieve a tangible goal can really help with creative thinking and problem solving, all great things that perhaps are not learnt in school as much as they should be. Also, storytelling is a really big part of D&D, and I believe that it's becoming somewhat of a lost art. We have long traditions of telling stories, and D&D can really help to ignite the imagination. So I think it's one of the best things about playing the game. Another area that can be helped to improve is with mathematics. There are some numbers in D&D that you have to keep track of. You have to add modifiers at different times, and all of these things can help with basic arithmetic, which, I mean, I'll be honest, my math skills aren't great, but through playing D&D, I feel a little bit more confident when just doing basic addition and subtraction. Empathy is also a huge part of playing D&D. Learning to understand how someone else feels, or learning to put yourself into someone else's shoes, is something that we do regularly when we play D&D. And I think that it's something that can be really valuable for young people to learn. And finally, you have this controlled environment where things can be experienced and experimented with. For example, if somebody is not good at conflict, right? Maybe your kids have trouble with authority. This is a place where you can experience an authoritarian figure telling you, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, the king commands you. And as a player, you have to cope with these situations and learn to work with some of the more difficult characters. So this kind of empathy, learning to understand another person's point of view and getting to walk in someone else's shoes is a really invaluable lesson, I think, for young people. So, how do you go about it? How do you get your kids playing D&D? Well, there's a couple of different ways. I can almost guarantee that any of you watching this video right now probably know someone who plays D&D. Now, approaching them and asking them to potentially run a campaign for you and your family, that might be a bit much. It's a lot of commitment, and maybe the DM might not be that familiar with playing with younger, more inexperienced types of players. But perhaps approaching someone to maybe prepare a one-shot, so a adventure that lasts one session and can give you a taster of what it's like to see if it's the kind of thing that you and your kids would really be into, then that would be worth trying. Another way you could go about possibly getting your kids to start playing some D&D is there are professional DMs out there. If you have a quick search, whether it's on Facebook or just online in general, you often can find people who, for a fee, will prepare an adventure for you and go meet you somewhere and play you through a game. Now, I have my qualms with this. I think that quality varies widely among people who do this, and there isn't necessarily really a standard, so I wouldn't recommend this off the bat, but it's another possibility. One of the other things that you could do is buy the starter set, buy the Stranger Things starter set, which we made a video about, or the Essentials kit, and try and run a campaign yourself for your kids. Now, this might be a little bit different because here you would be playing the Dungeon Master or the Games Master, and that is somewhat like a referee. Now, if you just want to get your kids playing and learning some of these skills that you can get from D&D, then I think it's a great solution. But if you're trying to increase the bond that you share with your kids, then it might create a little bit of a division. Finally, if you have quite young kids, I would say under 8 years old, and you still would like them to try something like D&D, I think you absolutely can. The key here is to keep things really simple, to forget about dice, to create a very obvious evil bad guy and have a very clear idea of what the goal is and try and achieve it together in a shared storytelling kind of way. We've talked a little bit about the idea of theatre of the mind, where you create these worlds and these things by just talking about them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that early on. When I first started playing any kind of RPG, it was my awesome brother who would, get a drawing pad and he'd draw some mountains and some forests and a cave. And he would tell me about this little world and he would say, "What would you like to do?" And we would spend hours, to the point where he had to go back to school. And I was like, no, we got to finish. We can't stop now. So it really can inspire kids to later on maybe pick up the game in its fullest form. Thank you so much for listening to us here today on Dirty 20, talking about how your kids could and should maybe be playing D&D. If you haven't yet, check out the movie Onwards. It's full of great D&D goodness and is a really, really moving story that I recommend extremely highly. Thank you and keep slaying. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to get in touch, please head on over to La Victoria Productions on Facebook. You can also check us out on Instagram. I'm Enano LVP. Jazzy J. Shiro is our producer. He's also on Twitter at Mouth La Victoria. We're also on LinkedIn. And if you get the time, please head on over to our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com.